This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Ayo, Ashleigh Monet here. You have seen the title of this video. I'm not going to leave you guys in suspense. You know today I'm going to attempt to make a plushie. Now, I don't have a sewing machine, which means I'm going to have to do this entirely by hand. Now, when I came up with this idea, I was not that intimidated. I've been hand sewing pretty much my whole life. I was never really taught. It was more like I was self-taught. But either way, I thought, no big deal. I know how to do that. It'll be fine. Well, then Halloween came around, and I had to alter my daughter's costume because it was too long for her. And as I'm sitting there hand sewing, I realized suddenly I had a lot of questions about it. Like, I don't know what kind of needle I'm supposed to be using. I just grab a needle. I don't know the proper way to tie off your thread. I just tie a big old knot in it. And as I'm sitting here realizing I have all these questions, suddenly, light bulb, ding, Skillshare. I logged into my Skillshare, I searched for hand sewing, and there we go. Hand Sewing Basics by Bernadette Banner. This class not only answered the questions I had, but also taught me a few things I didn't even know I needed to know. That is the awesome thing about Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across so many categories. Categories like design, illustration, film, photography, productivity, and so much more. They also offer learning paths, which are curated lists of multiple classes that you can take to master a particular skill. Now, once I invest in that sewing machine, boom, Skillshare is going to help me figure out how to use it. And the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today and take your hobbies, passions, jobs, side hustles, all to the next level. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's make that plushie happen. So what plushie am I going to tackle? I'll give you a hint. Here's my fabric. And I have some buttons for eyes. Yes, I'm going to be making my cherished Voodoo Victor. I kind of wanted to do Gwenny the Bat since she's like my channel mascot. But I'm a beginner. I'm new to this. I don't think I could pull off something that complex. Yet, anyways. Maybe one day. But Voodoo Victor feels like he could be pretty simple. Now, I will say this fabric is not a dead ringer match for Voodoo Vic. As you can see, his green is a lot more intense, but I had a heck of a time finding fabric, and if I wanted something that was both inexpensive and soft, like this is really nice feeling, almost like a sweater fabric, super soft, but I had to compromise on color, so he'll be a bit more dull, more sagey in his plushie form. All right, step 1, let me make a pattern for my fabric. I'm going to start with the body. I had perused a few plushie patterns in this style of just making one piece out of the body, arms, and legs. Definitely seemed the most simple, so I went with that. I started by sketching the shape I wanted my plushie to be, and then added about a 1/2 inch on every side for stitching room. And that created my pattern template, which I cut out. And now if you're wondering why there's only a half a body here, I'm just going to flip and trace this template so my plushie is symmetrical. So now we've got the body, it's time to do the head. Same system of sketching the desired size, and then I just extended the template a bit to allow for stitching room. Cut it out. And I'm looking at this template and I see one big problem. I bring in my buttons and I realize they're just so tiny. They're just not going to work for his eyes. The proportions will be way off. I'm in the zone though, and I'm not going to stop and try to find some massive buttons today. So we're going to have to make him a little smaller. And by that, I mean a lot smaller. So here, I just took the existing templates and downsized them significantly. And I think that size will be okay. So now it's time to trace out my pattern on the fabric and cut out my shapes. I need to cut out 2 of both shapes so I can sew those 2 pieces together to make a stuffable 3D object. Now, as I was cutting, I was getting a little concerned about my fabric choice and just how stretchy it was. It was actually kind of hard to cut because of how stretchy it was. And I know most people pin the pattern to the fabric and cut that, and it helps kind of hold it in place. For whatever reason, I tried that and it was not working for me, so I just did it this way. But because it was so stretchy, I was starting to worry that it would be kind of odd to stuff, that it might come out lumpy. I don't know. I was freaking out, but I basically just crossed my fingers and carried on, hoping for the best. Once the shapes were cut out, I pinned them together, and starting with the head portion, marked the point to where I wanted the pieces to be sewn. And then, just started going at it, hand sewing a cross stitch. And it became clear very early on that this was going to be a very long time. Ugh. Here's some real-time footage. Once the head was mostly done, it was time to stuff it. I bought a big bag of polyfill and was fighting for my life a little bit trying to turn this piece inside out. But I got it eventually and just began stuffing and stuffing. Boy, this process made me wish I had that little Build-A-Bear device that like shoots the stuffing out through a tube right to where it needs to go. Ah well, a little extra elbow grease never hurt nobody. Now, as you can see from my Muse Victor, he has dark little patches added here and there. So I'm going to conceal that head's closure stitches with a patch. Should work perfectly. All right, head's done. Let's move on to the body yaddy yaddy. Lord help me, this took forever. And it was destined to happen at some point in this process. Yep. Blood has been shed. My blood literally went into this project.
Did you hurt yourself?
Did you hurt yourself?
Yeah. Stabbing my stupid fingers on a thimble. Ugh. Who came up with this idea? This was the dumbest idea. If I had a freaking sewing machine, this would have been like 30 seconds of work. Done.
Why are you doing that?
The blood! Oh, it's getting worse. All right, now that my tantrum is over and the bleeding has stopped, I can press on. Now it's time to flip the body inside out and stuff it. This was a lot harder than the head, but luckily I have my magic wand. No, it's just a chopstick, but it helped a lot to make the process easier. I started by stuffing the legs, then just added a stitch to the top of them to give the illusion that this plushie was made with the feet and arms separate from the body. Yeah, see what I did there? Same process on the arms. And then to stuff the body, and that part was simple. I needed simple. But now it's finally time to bring these two pieces together. All right, we officially have an assembled plushie. Now we just have to make it look like Victor. I started by drawing some key features with alcohol marker. I considered using fabric paint for these, but I didn't want to have to worry about dry time. It was at this point that I wanted to work on his eyes and made the terrible discovery that after all of that work, they were still too small for his head. I had no choice. I needed a button alternative now, like I wasn't about to re-sew him even smaller. I thought a good idea would be to create my own buttons out of Shrinky Dink material. Now, obviously, since they shrink when heated, I needed to start by making them way too large. Here entereth this massive orange squishy to act as my stencil. And then I just used acrylic brush markers to paint them to look like buttons. Cut them out, and for the buttonholes, I originally wanted to hole punch them, but my hole punch didn't reach far enough. So I thought, okay, after they shrink down, I'll just drill holes into them. The shrinking process is always so fun to watch, and it was effective. Both buttons looked great and shrunk down significantly. Unfortunately, not far enough down. Yes, now I had buttons that were entirely too big. Fail! After an off-camera Mariah Carey meltdown, I regrouped and found these little wood chips among my art supplies. They were a good size, so now I just had to drill holes in them and make them look like buttons. You can tell I wasn't even trying at this point with my super professional lined loose leaf paper backdrop. But with my acrylic markers, I got the chips to look enough like buttons and I could finally move on. Adding his black little tears and more patches all over. And of course we can't forget his pink little heart. Next I went through and added his little cross stitches wherever there were seams. And I gotta be honest, he was looking a little too neat and tidy for me at this point. So I went ahead and took my alcohol markers and just added a little grunge to little Victor. Some dirt spots. I had a lot of fun with that, but I don't know. Maybe looking at it now, did I take it a little too far? I don't know. He definitely looks really like distressed and dingy now, which the original Victor really doesn't that much. But I still kind of like it, so I don't know. I'm torn. But now it is time to finally attach the button eyes that have been the bane of my existence thus far. And I've got to say they were worth all of the trouble because that finally made this little guy look like my Victor. Yes, I was finally happy with this little dude. But he is a voodoo doll, so I couldn't call him finished until I crammed some pins into him. Oh, that's gotta hurt. But with that, I have tackled my first ever plushie. All of my fails aside, I actually really love how he turned out. Maybe if I had to critique, I'd say his belly could be rounder and his legs look smaller than his arms, but that's honestly nitpicking. Like, for my first time, he is good. He's cute. He feels nice to squeeze. Yeah, I adore him. Boop. I had fun with this project. It was something new, something I was nervous to try, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm kind of down to try some other plushie designs in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.